This is week 3 of our Vision series. I was away last week and I heard you had a great service. We're thinking about what it means to pursue God until heaven overflows through us. That's our vision, to pursue God until heaven overflows through us. So week 1, we talked about how St. Philip's is a presence church. We start with the pursuit, not the overflow. And at St. Philip's, the pursuit looks like going after the presence of God. In week 2, we looked at how we're a priestly church. By that, I mean that our pursuit of God is understood in terms of ministering unto the Lord. That's what we've just been doing. We weren't singing to him to get stuff from him. We were singing to him to minister unto him. Get it? So we noted in 2 Chronicles, Ezekiel, what happens when God's people minister unto him, the presence fills the temple and the nation is restored to him. Come on. Today we're going to look at the second part of our statement, the overflow, and the title of this talk is that we are a powerful church. We're a presence church, we're a priestly church, and we're a powerful church. I'm so sorry we're going to be so late, but he's worth it. Before I get stuck in, I just want to make something clear, right? Though we have a vision statement with a rich emphasis and dynamic, ultimately, the vision is Jesus. Okay, our vision statement is really just a gift from him to point us to him and point others to him, right? The vision is Jesus. Jesus is our vision. Take a look at this painting. Can you see it? It's about as high as it goes, I think. It's of a beautiful village in Northern Ireland called Kearney. It's owned by the National Trust, but it's lived in by real people. Can we get it on the screen, Tim? Just in case you can't see it from the back. Lovely little place, Irishy type cottages, quaint little streets. Being on the coast of Northern Ireland, sometimes, as you can see, the light is very dramatic. And I like this painting. My dad did it. It's a good likeness. But I had this thought this week. When people admire a piece of artwork, they don't admire the canvas, they admire what's painted on the canvas. They look at the paint. The substance of this piece of art is the paint. So yes, we are looking at a canvas, but we're not really seeing the canvas. We're seeing the paint. And the thought came into my mind that the church, its life and ministry, is a canvas. We are the paintbrushes. Jesus is the paint. Church is just a canvas. So we may learn to paint in our particular style, in our particular way, our particular calling and vision. But ultimately, the picture we are painting is Jesus. He's the substance and the subject. Hey. And it has to be a good likeness, a true representation. Because when people look at us and when people look at you, they need to see the true Jesus. The church is a canvas. We are the paintbrushes. Jesus is the paint. Have you got it? It's very simple, but I got excited by that. So keep that in your mind, that little thought, as I continue. Please will you turn to Matthew 16. If you have it, it'll come up on the screen. Starting at verse 13, let's get something straight as we begin. This is what it says. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." That is massive. We're not going to go into all of it. Just 4 quick observations as we get started, as we think about the overflow dynamic of our vision here. First, verse 16. Peter utters the supreme revelation of the church. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. The church's revelation is that simple. Jesus is not part of a bigger story. He is the story. He's not part of the narrative. He's the all in all. He is the subject. Second observation, verse 18, Jesus speaks about the second most important revelation of the church. He builds it. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Jesus builds the church. Have we got it? We don't. It's essential for us to understand as we think about the overflow, if we think about ministry, mission, what we do, right? We do not build the church, he does. Which is why growth strategies and attractional models of church are missing the point. The lukewarm will always be attracted to performance and social clubs. But the spiritually hungry are attracted to the presence of God. Which is why at St. Philip's we are not interested in attracting people, we are interested in attracting the presence. Please give me an amen. Amen. Come on. He builds the church. Now, how do we know when he is not building it? Verse 18 tells us the gates of hell prevail. Is fear ruling and reigning? Is there division and conflict? Are its people professing faith but living unholy lives? Is it focused on worldly things rather than kingdom things? Is it in decline? Or is it growing bigger but not deeper? A big problem with attractional church. If any of those things are true, and a whole load of others, then we are building the church. But when he builds the church, then the gates do not prevail. And at St. Philip's, we're trying to build a context in which he gets to build his church. Third observation, still on verse 18, the substance by which he builds it is himself. He's the subject and he's the substance. He's the paint and the picture. Remember what I said in Vision Talk 2? I reminded us, Psalm 22 says that he's enthroned on the praises of his people, his priests. And John 12 tells us that when he's lifted up, he will draw all people to himself. We don't build with us, he builds with him. He's the substance. That's what makes churches grow. The presence of the exalted Lord himself. It's not the bricks and mortar, that's just a canvas. It's not doctrine and a vision statement, that's just a canvas. It's not the ministry and mission and outreach that we do, that's just a canvas. It's himself, the foundation, the cornerstone. He builds it and he dwells in it. He is both the temple and the cloud that fills it. Hey. So what point has any mission that we do if it does not bring others to encounter the cloud? Fourth observation, verse 19. The church's business is heaven. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. In this verse, Jesus is not talking about Peter holding the keys to the pearly gates. He is saying that the church is all about the kingdom. Its ministry is heaven. On earth as it is in heaven is the mandate of the church. Hey. Our vision statement doesn't call us to overflow with good ideas or missional strategies. It calls us to overflow with heaven. The church's ministry is therefore supernatural. It's in the Bible. And if it's supernatural, it needs power. The overflow should look like power, so let's talk about power. Are you guys okay so far? Good, okay. Now, you have very kindly listened to me for 2 weeks, encouraging you quite energetically at times to prioritize the pursuit. I'm sorry about the energy. I've just decided I'm going to give the Lord all of my enthusiasm. That's why I get shouty sometimes. I'm not beating the sheep, as my old vicar used to say. Just tapping you gently. Come on. So I want us to agree that we will not be a church that is too busy doing things for Jesus to know what it even means to be intimate with Jesus. Because we're stupid if we do that, because intimacy is the doorway to power. So I want you to resist everything that wages war with intimacy. I want you to engage your emotions and your desire for God. I want you to learn to minister unto him and to live your life healthy, whole, connected to the presence, captivated by the one who was slain and rose again, submitted to him, envisioned in your destiny, and empowered to live it. So the pursuit is the main thing, but as I always say, our vision is geared to the overflow. We're not navel gazers. So we pursue him, minister unto him, but when we do that, we expect God to move. We expect his glory to fill what we're doing. We expect his intervention to ignite what we offer him. We expect fire on the altar. Because the pursuit seeks his presence, the overflow manifests his power. That's how it should be. That is how it must be. So good. I know. Thank you. We're not interested in ministry and mission in our own strength. Just what Tim prayed before in our prayer meeting this morning before the service. We're not interested, Tim, you prophetic man, we're not interested in ministry and mission in our own strength. Nodding heads. Why do we keep doing it then? Just to warn you, I've got a hard teaching this morning. And I want you to bear with me. Please don't be offended, because I'm going to go somewhere with it, okay? I mean, you can be offended if you want, but we don't do offense here, so, you're out. Here it is. Are you ready? Hard teaching. Anything you do in the flesh at St. Philip's is worthless in the kingdom. It's worthless. Jeremiah 17, listen to this. This is what the Lord says. Cursed is the one who trusts in man, who draws strength from mere flesh, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. That person will be like a bush in the wastelands. They will not see prosperity when it comes. They will dwell in the parched places of the desert, in the salt land where no one lives. But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. Verse 5, cursed is the one who draws strength from mere flesh. That couldn't be clearer. The flesh is under a curse. Verse 6, the one who operates in the flesh has turned away from the Lord. We can't minister unto him. We can't expect his presence to fill this temple. We can't expect him to send down fire on the altar of our endeavors for him if we have turned away from him. Doing so, verse 6 tells us, causes death. This is a hard teaching. The spirit is full of life, but the flesh results in spiritual death. It says, but those who put their confidence in the Lord, in other words, they operate out of his presence and power, are blessed. Their roots drink from the stream of life. Their ministry, therefore, brings spiritual life, resurrection life, devil-destroying life. Quick poll. Who here wants what we do here to bring life here? I can see those of you with your hands down. I'm just kidding. Not looking. Me too. Anything we do in the flesh is worthless in the kingdom. Hard teaching. John 6:63, Jesus said, it is the Spirit who gives life, the flesh profits nothing. The words I've spoken to you are both spirit and life. Which means that power to raise dead things should flow in our overflow. The business of the church is supernatural life. As I said last year, what good is it to display our own capabilities when he wants us to display his capabilities? It's not meant to be a self-portrait. What's the point of demonstrating to the lost and hurting what humans can achieve when they need to see what he can achieve? Why would we want to work at doing things in the flesh when those walking in spiritual death need spiritual life? Ministry rooted in the flesh carries death. It cannot carry resurrection life. According to Jesus. Listen, be aware that often when we pray for Jesus to bless what we are doing, we're actually just praying that he'll bless the flesh. And he can't do that because he can't bless a curse. If that's a spiritual truth, that might explain why so much of what I've tried to do for him has borne no fruit whatsoever. Though I love him and seek to serve him, if I'm doing it in the flesh, he won't bless it. I mean, to me, that's like, wow, I need to look at every single thing I do in church for him, in this, everything I do. The sign of ministry in the Spirit is that we are doing things that are only possible with him, through him, and in him. Healing physical illness, prophecy and words of knowledge, deliverance from demonic oppression and harassing spirits, signs, miracles, and wonders, those things require resurrection power from the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead. Which it says in Romans 8:11, by the way, lives in you. Power looks like power. Relying on our own strength, I feel, is a downward dynamic, right? That actually pulls us away from heaven, okay? It requires us to dig deep. We end up scraping the barrel, running on fumes. Anyone felt that in ministry or life? It's exhausting and it leads to death, but overflowing in the power of the Spirit is an upward dynamic. It points us to heaven. You have to be full to overflow. You have to be brimming over. It's the opposite of exhausting. It's joyful and leads to life. One of my favorite things on planet Earth, as I probably shared before, it's not my family, it's being out in the sea in big waves, right? Love it. The feeling of the swell when it lifts you off your feet is one of my favorite feelings on planet Earth. I can spend hours out in the water on holiday. The more powerful, the better, just beyond the breakers, just beyond my natural depth, focus, just beyond my natural depth, no longer touching the bottom, just beyond feeling safe, the lift, the weightlessness, the power of the sea, the nothing I can do in my own strength feeling. I love that. It fills me with so much joy. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't get excited by parish plans or missional strategies. I get excited by the resurrection of Jesus. I get excited by the presence of his Spirit. I get excited by his power. I get excited by legs growing out and warts disappearing, both of which we've had here. I get excited by the breaking of addictions and curses and overwhelming the world with the things of heaven. These things point to Jesus, and Jesus only, because they're impossible for us to do without his power. I don't want to do worthless things. I want the Lord to ignite my offering with fire. Do you remember 2 weeks ago we looked at 2 Chronicles 7? Let's look at it again really quickly, 3 verses. When Solomon finished praying, fire came down from heaven. I'll just read that again. Just, because we keep making this book a history book. When Solomon finished praying, actual real fire actually came down from actually real heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and then the actual glory of the Lord actually filled the temple. The priests could not actually enter the temple of the Lord because the glory of the Lord filled it. When all the Israelites actually saw the actual fire coming actually down and the actual glory of the Lord actually filling the actual temple, they knelt on the pavement with their faces on the ground, and they worshipped and gave thanks to the Lord, saying, "He is good, his love endures forever." That's what we're going after here. If you think it's a history book, you won't have faith for it. If you know it's real, you will. That our ministry unto the Lord would cause his fire to consume our offerings and for the lost to be awakened to the goodness and the love of Jesus. So we have to shift from being satisfied with doing unsupernatural things in our own strength. What we do is worthless unless God sets it on fire. Do you see it's a hard teaching? Fire doesn't land on good intentions, it doesn't land on good ideas, and it actually doesn't land on hard work and effort. The fire lands on priestly devotion. And when that happens, it draws men and women to Christ. The reason it's a hard message is that it's a corrective message. It's meant to challenge the way that we understand mission. I have to say to you, please don't think I'm devaluing the stuff we do. We serve others in service of Jesus, right? It's ultimately all for him. We serve Jesus when we cook a meal or fill a food bag. We serve Jesus when we welcome a visitor to church, when we take a service at Rush Hill Nursing Home, or whatever it's called now, when we do a shift at the pantry at St. Martin's Garden. What you did for the least of these, you did for me. In that sense, everything that you beautiful people do in and through this church, for this community, you do for Jesus. Thank you. Thank you, food bank team, pantry volunteers, and summer support shoppers. Thank you, warm space team, hearty meals chefs. Thank you, pastoral team, home visitors and intercessors. Thank you, light party volunteers, school Christmas gift bag stuffers, and school governors. Thank you, MAT 22 development team, fundraisers and mission team. Thank you, all of you who've donated food today to Genesis in the city. Thank you for loving your neighbors and for loving the Lord so well. Please understand, I am not devaluing what we do. I just want us to paint a true likeness. Paul calls it the full gospel. So the corrective I'm offering is that we move beyond saying that our service is worship. I want us to have a more mature understanding. Because I think that what the church has done in agreeing with that narrative, that service is worship. Just hear me, okay? I think what the church has done is that Christians have fallen into the thinking that doing is worship. And so we busy ourselves instead of learning to be still and know him, instead of learning how to value the presence and love him, instead of choosing the better part and learning how to pour the oil of devotion onto his beautiful feet, instead of learning how to receive power. The fire fell on priestly ministry, and that priestly ministry looked like worship. It looked like priests and musicians singing love songs to Jesus. It looked like hundreds and hundreds of people falling on their faces in the street when the glory fell, and they started singing, "He is good, his love endures forever." That is revival, and that is worship. So I honor all the things in which you guys do here to serve. But what I'm trying to do is call us higher, okay? Don't be satisfied with anything less than something supernatural when you serve the Lord. Imagine one-to-one as more than a monthly meal with a short message about Jesus and a temporary reprieve from loneliness for those who attend. Imagine it also as a place where our team is overflowing with prophetic words and the power to heal. Imagine the food bank as more than a bag of food and some signposting to other agencies. Imagine it as a place where chains in the spirit actually fall off as people walk into this building. Imagine the warm space that we offer in the winter months as a room with more than just heating, a friendly welcome, and a couple of jigsaws. Imagine it that it's also a place where people arrive lost and leave saved. And if we can help them with debt advice at the same time, that's great. The personal pursuit, the priestly ministry, the presence of Jesus, and the powerful overflow of heaven. We want this church to be a canvas that allows this neighborhood to see Jesus rightly. For the salvation of many and the glory of the Lamb. Amen? So that's the journey, guys. That's what we're going for. It's going to be fun. Could take years. Hard message? Uncomfortable. There's a lot that I wanted to speak to you about this morning about how you can get involved in this church, how you can grow in power, ministry opportunities, how you can be a paintbrush here. I didn't have time today because I got sidetracked by Jesus, but I'll try and do that next week, okay? I'll try and be more practical next week. It's less of a sort of preach and more of a kind of here's Here's how you can get involved if that's helpful to you, especially for you new guys. I do want to recommend just a couple of things, and then I'm going to finish in a second. Firstly, Tim, can you get that slide up? There's a menu page on our website. Most of you probably don't know it exists. But if you go onto our website and click on the top right-hand corner, it should be there, Tim. It's a white slide just above, just below, just that one. Perfect. And that's just the top of it. But if you scroll down, it sort of gives you an overview of the life and ministry of this church, from prayer and discipleship to kingdom outreach, worship, all that kind of stuff. So take a look at that if you'd like an overview. The other thing I'd just quickly like to recommend is this booklet, which articulates what I've been trying to talk about today, how it shapes our Matt 22 ministry. If you're new today, Matt 22 is our Kingdom Outreach ministry. Matthew chapter 22, love your neighbor. It's all in there. But what I've been trying to say is what we've tried to distill in here, that we think God's calling us to more than a bag of food. So have a look at that. We've got new copies on the info desk. There are about 30 copies there. You can grab it on the way out if you'd like. But in the final few moments, if you're okay just to keep listening, guys, I want to return to the idea of church being a canvas and update you on one thing. So this is an update, okay? So ultimately, I want each of us to learn how to pursue and overflow personally. That's how our vision will come to fruition. A canvas is made up of individual threads. So it's not my desire to do church in a way that I create opportunities for you to do stuff. I don't want to do church that way. But I totally understand that church is a context for discipleship and mission, right? The personal pursuit, the personal overflow, it needs to be expressed corporately, okay? That's what church is. Now, we don't need initiatives, programs, or strategies. We just need the presence and power of God overflowing in each of us. But the reality is that if church is a canvas, then we need to work out our growth and our ministry, our mission, our life together, okay? So that he can be glorified. So I just want to update you on the canvas. For a while, is that okay? Yeah. Right, okay, thank you. Because I don't know if we're going to get to ministry today. All I want to do is pray for people, but I think I need to talk to you about this. For a while, we have been asking the question, are our facilities fit for purpose? We are extremely grateful for this building, but is there a lid limiting us from doing what we might be called to do as the ministry grows? So the offices don't have much room for growth. We're trying to disciple our swordfish group in a tiny room at the back, which doesn't really have any windows. We can't expand Matt 22 with our current space. 18 months ago, I shared with you about locating a cafe here at St. Philip's, and we've explored a number of options. We've met with people doing similar things. We've worked on costings and business plans, and that process has brought us to a point of sensing that maybe the Lord wants us to think bigger, to imagine a bigger canvas, or to flip the metaphor, to extend the tent pole so that the canvas can stretch. Bigger footprint, more impactful ministry. A statement that we're here for Odd Down and that Odd Down is worth investing in. What would St. Philip's be like with a cafe? Not tucked away in the Institute, which if you're visiting is a room over here, but right at the heart of the building as you enter the main doors. Open to the community throughout the week, open to us on a Sunday as we walk in, and freeing up the rest of the back hall there, because I suspect we might need that soon. What would St. Philip's be like with more dedicated spaces for debt advice, counseling, employability schemes, and partnerships with other Christian organizations? What would St. Philip's be like with less pressure on existing facilities for warm spaces or a food pantry on site, as well as St. Martin's Garden or a breakfast club for the kids next door? What would it be like to have a permanent prayer room, a space for Sozo prayer ministry, a setup that would allow healing rooms to be happening in here, a space for our youth out on the lawn, or even facilities for a future discipleship year at St. Philip's? I don't know, just asking questions. What would it be like to have an office fit for a growing team of staff and volunteers? More on that next week. So with a team of people from the congregation and also the staff, we've been working with an architect to explore possibilities and costs. And today I just want to show you where we've got to since our first conversation about maybe building a bar in the Institute and buying a coffee machine. Hang on. Before I do, though, just please understand, I'm not telling you this will happen. And I'm not pitching an idea to expand Paul Ferguson Ministries International. It's the beginning of a conversation and an appeal to pray. It's the beginning of a journey where together we might think about making a sort of once in two generation investment in this building. So we may decide that it's not the right thing. Or we may decide that it's absolutely the right thing, but we can't raise the money. But I'd love your thoughts, and I'm super chilled. We've hardly spent a penny. But it's just the beginning of a conversation, okay? Happy to chat. So all I'm going to do right now is give you a little heads up and talk about some of the concepts that might look like a bigger canvas, okay? I've got 5 minutes. Someone go and tell the kids we're going to be late. Analogy there. Now, you can't see that, but they're going to come up on the screen, and you can look later. We've been doing what architects call a feasibility study, and they've come up with 3 designs which we all agree won't work. But that's the point. Any architect will tell you that's the point. But it has helped us to think about things. So, Tim, can we get these on the screen? I'm going to go really quick. At the bottom in the middle is the existing footprint of the church, and this is a big new front on it. Worship space in all of these options remain the same. But we're looking at a third space, as I call it, so we need space for our kids. The back room isn't good. 14 kids max. They're crawling up the walls. I have to strap them into their seats. New offices, new toilets. Sorry, most exciting thing. Looking at how it might work, redeveloping the flat above this church, which is now empty, how that might work for office space or counseling rooms or whatever. Second option, Tim, looking at a massive cafe, making it the main thing. Look at the diagram at the bottom right, lots of glass at the front of church, the blue arrows, lots of views into. Because I've got to apologize to PCC. I was tired that night, and I probably described this church as being slightly ugly. I didn't mean that. I was just tired. Stuff going on that week, and you can pray for me later. But what I was trying to say was it's quite an imposing frontage. There isn't really a view in. It's not the most welcoming design of a building. So we're talking about what would it look like if our community could see, if there was light and life and activity. So many people tell me, which church? Oh, I've driven past that for 30 years, didn't realize it was there. Next one, Tim. None of these are working right, but I just want to show you. Here's an idea of as you walk in straight into the cafe. And that wall there all blown out and all glass. So you can have a look at those later, okay? Tim, could you put the reel on? Sometimes it's helpful to see some of these images. Here's a church in Oxford that did something similar. And it's helpful just to see what can happen. I find it helpful. What might happen? It doesn't seem to be. Oh, there we go. So ultimately, as you look at those images, and if you're creative, let the juices flow. Although we're not going to design by committee. It's just what I'm asking you to do is let me know what you think. Email me, pop around for coffee. Let's go out for lunch you're buying. And we can talk about it. We can pray about it. We are working with a friend of Lisa's who is a fundraiser, professional fundraiser, and Graham Pearson has done an amazing, huge amount of work already. We are looking at raising most of this by grant funding. You're welcome to contribute if you'd like. But we're praying in cash from the kingdom. Who knows? It's going to cost about $1 million. I've got no problem with that. Money's just money. But we could do something with half that. Who knows? The key thing is, and we're going to finish now, okay, guys? Ultimately, we do not need to spend a penny for revival. We don't need more space for God to move. And there's a very valid argument that we don't need a financial burden or a massive distraction. Things are going fine just as they are. And I'm open to all of those conversations because I'm not pitching for this. I'm just asking if it's right, okay? Our priority remains ministering unto Jesus and learning to overflow personally with the kind of power that he wants us to. The question I'm asking, though, is that if he is going to increase his presence, which I think he's doing, the last 3 weeks before I went on my trip felt like there was a shift. If he's on the move, if there is a calling that will genuinely impact this neighborhood and this city, then I think we need to at least ask the question, what do you want us to do, Jesus? And what would you do if we gave you a canvas worthy of your name?